Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Pillowtalk podcast.
To all of those who are tuning in for the first time, to figure out why we are calling this the Pillowtalk podcast, you need to go listen to our first episode. And for those of you who are our regular listeners, so around 10,000 of you, you already know why it's called this.
10,000, I think you're being a little pessimistic.
Yeah,
I think
so-
it would have reached about a lakh by now.
Yeah, I mean,
100,000.
easy. I didn't want to say it, but if you want to, then
Let's just be humble.
Yeah. So this week we have decided that we will talk about the other issue that's hit our country now that we are past the coronavirus, at least in terms of talking about it. So this time in this episode, we will be discussing not Narendra Modi as the issue, but the CAA, the NPR, and the NRC, and how it has affected the country and how it's going to, go on in the future as well.
Once again, you're joined by your two loving hosts, Manan Kalra and Jay
Jai
Malhotra.
Malhotra.
And we're going to talk about what the CAB is, the Citizenship Amendment Bill is, what implications it has in exclusion and in with respect to the NRC and the NPR. And we'll be giving our opinions, and we would love to have a conversation with you who necessarily don't think
The
like
same way
us.
that we do.
Yeah, even Jay and I differ on some of the parts, but we would love to get in touch with all of those who have a good point in support of the CA and NRC and stuff. So before we start, I'll just quickly read about what CAB is. Um, Verbatim, it says, provided that any person belonging to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, or Christian community from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or Pakistan who entered into India on or before 31st of December 2014 and who has been exempted by the central government by or under Clause C of subsection 2 of Section 3 of the Passport Entry into India Act 1920 or from the application of the provisions of the Foreigners Act 1946 or any rule or order made thereunder shall not be treated as illegal immigrant for the purposes of this act.
So basically, if you want to get rid of the technical definition, this act will provide fast track citizenship to people belonging to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, or Christian communities from the neighboring countries, which are Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan only. The what this act actually does is that so before this act there were four ways of actually getting citizenship into a country. One was by birth, one was by naturalization, one was by registration, and the last one was sorry, I'm not coughing because I have coronavirus. This is just because of water. Yeah, and the fourth one was through again a registration process. So, what the government has put forth is that even though we are not including all religions within the purview of this act, the religions who have been excluded still have the avenue of getting citizenship through the pre existing model. The problem with that is that this act gives fast track citizenship, and the other process is a very prolonged one. So, if there are people from six religions who are being given special treatment, then that treatment should be extended to people of all communities, of all religions, of all countries, and it should not be restricted to a certain few groups or communities.
Also, obviously, now that since there's been a lot of buzz around the CAB, we know what religion is missing from the list of religions that they've provided. So essentially, it's the Muslim religion that is missing from the whole list of religions. And the reason that they say that it is because Muslims are not considered to be persecuted in the countries of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. So essentially, that's the reason why they've not put it on the list, which I mean makes sense. But once you put the whole thing into perspective with CAB and NRC and NPR, whatever the hell they're cooking, once you put that whole thing into perspective, it really becomes a difficult act to just process and understand how it's going to basically amend the whole demographic of the country.
The major problem that I feel, and this is also very funny, is that in all of their rally addresses, or whenever they've gone out to talk about the NRC, the NPR, or the CA, and give clarification to the people around the country, they have said that this act is for people who are being persecuted in other nations. One thing that you may not have realized when we were talking about it, or when we were telling you what the verbatim is that the Gazette does not include the word persecuted communities anywhere. So this is another way of them just trying to, manipulate the minds of citizens in our country to make them think like what is being put forth is a very novel act, when in reality, it might be, it might not be, we don't know. But as far as the discussion is gone, the clarification is gone, it does not look like something which will have
And
a long lasting impact that will benefit our society.
also, like we were discussing somewhat before the podcast as well, that even though they've used the term persecuted, there are still persecuted communities within the religion that are still not being granted citizenship, like the Ahmadiyas Muslim. If I'm if
Ahmadiyas in Pakistan, Uyghurs in China, the Tamil Christians in Sri Lanka. These are all heavily persecuted communities which are not included in this list. Why? Because they claim, the government claims, that these subgroups of religions are not recognized worldwide. I'm sorry, but what I feel is that even though they're not recognized, if they are being persecuted, then as a nation, it is our duty to extend a helping hand.
also just putting a normal thought into it, why does India need more population in the country?
So that is a very good question.
I mean, we have 1.3 billion people. We don't have enough space. If coronavirus spreads in our country, we'll be dead in a month.
But then we can take in more citizens, so
So,
that's a good thing.
so I mean, there is literally no need. But okay, eventually we know why this bill was passed, because of the whole Assam situation that happened. Which again, if we get into it, it's another discussion for another day. But essentially, what happened in Assam was. That people that they I think they started with the NRC.
NRC.
They started with the NRC, and basically what they found out was that under the NRC, 70% of the population who weren't registered were basically Hindus, and the rest 30% was the other community. And they realized that Hindus is their major demographic, is their major vote bank. So they decided to put in CAB so that they could fast track the citizenship of these people, and they can get their vote bank back again. So essentially, how that developed, it took talks about, and then I think Mr. Amit Shah said in one of his rallies or whatever that it's going to be a nationwide NRC and it's going to be nationwide CAB, even though the logistics and the operations and the technicalities of how it's going to be implemented is not out there. But I think even the act in isolation is
Not secular
is I
and
mean it,
discriminatory.
and also I feel secular discriminatory on one side. I think it's just that there's no need to it, and the error percentage of this is too high. Even if, let's say, there's an error percentage of 10% people who you say are legal citizens but don't get citizenship through this, even a 10% in the country of 1.3 billion. I mean, I think that's a lot, and you can't. Also, where do you push these people out? That's
We
another.
have detention centers for that, which they claim are not being made. You guys must be thinking that we are left jihadis or we are urban Naxals, but fret not. I am a registered member of the RSS because
But I would genuinely would want to know how the people are supporting the CAB, because I've read a lot of stuff online and I'm still looking for it, and it just seems as if it's a cry for Hindus to not be persecuted, because all the articles that I'm reading say that Hindus at the time of partition in Pakistan were 22%. Now it's down to what, 2% or 1% or something like that. Some figure, I'm not sure. And I mean, that's Pakistan.
I mean, that's not the right thing to say, but
No, but like, what can we do about it? And like,
Hmm.
why should, like, okay, I understand whatever's happened 20, and it says 22% of the population, right? You have to understand that the population grows in absolute numbers. So if there are 22% Hindus and there are 78, he calculate, that's the calculation, 78% Muslims. So 78% Muslims will reproduce more than the 22% Hindus. So eventually the percentage will drop. And the only thing that the opposition says is we want there. Oh, and Mr. Amit Shah says that there is no country for Hindus.
I don't like how you are addressing Amit Shah in such a condescending manner.
Mr.
But
Mr. Amit Shah.
Mr. Motabhai. But one more thing that we have to understand through all of this is that the main motivation behind the people who are actually supporting it is revenge, and to make
That's
sure
true.
that what once happened to our community doesn't happen again. But what they are failing to understand is that the people who they're trying to push out are also part of the same community that don't want anything like the past to happen again.
So interesting anecdote, but one day I was sitting with someone, and there were two people who were discussing about CAB and NRC, and I just wanted to swoop into that conversation, so I
Yeah,
started
that's the
talking to them.
Sutta wala
Yeah, that's the
conversation.
Sutawala conversation, and basically, so it was me against them essentially because I was not supporting the act, and they were supporting the act.
Also because he is a 20-year-old and they weren't.
Yeah, and they said ki when we were 20, even we felt the need to basically
Mobilize.
yeah, and raise our voices and be political. But he said once we've reached our 30s, we've realized what the real world is and how they treat other people. I said I didn't understand what that meant, but essentially how they were supporting the act was again with the 22 to 2% thing statistic. And another thing that they said was word to word, they said if you poke someone too much, they will basically retaliate against you, which basically puts us into another conversation about um, the Delhi riots and the riots that are happening around the world, where Jay and I distinctly differ on our views, where I mean, I don't think so. We still don't know how the riot started, like which side essentially started it. But for me, if anyone picks up a weapon, I think that's flat out wrong.
Sorry. So I just checked about the percentages, and there is an article from India Today. I don't know how reliable the source is, just like all other sources that are available to us now. But it says that the BGP's claim that Pakistan's non-Muslim population has declined from 23% to 3.7% is actually not true. There are a lot of intricate details that have been missed out in this claim. Again, which
I
if we
mean,
want to
essentially,
cover,
essentially
yeah,
that's how they
how they that is their
put the
politics.
news
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Then if we talk about the Delhi riots, then violence in principle, I agree, is absolutely incorrect. There is absolutely no justification of why one person should pick up a weapon, should pick up anything whatsoever
Petrol
to harm
bombs.
the other person or just burn a bus down. But my point is that we are coming at this from a very privileged position, right? We are talking about violence as if it has come to affect us, as if it's knocking at our doorsteps, when it actually isn't, which is why we have such a neutral stance about it. If you tell me, if I come to your house, I beat your parents every day for 2 months, and then you get an avenue, you get some support to hit back at me, would you not want to take that avenue?
I mean, I understand, but again, I will hit you back. But the thing is, if this goes on,
Yeah, yeah.
this will go on forever.
See that.
Like there's no end to it,
Hmm.
and I don't think there's any side, again, I'll say sides again and again, there's any side that will stop it, because this, unless some sort of mental revolution happens, and some political atmosphere is just switched around. I don't think anyone can stop the violence that has been happening since forever.
You may call me an optimist, but I do feel that the mental revolution is coming with, the youth. And it might be because of the bubble that I've been living in, and the bubble includes only a certain kind of people that I interact with who share a
Similar
rather
beliefs.
similar
Yeah.
belief that even though they might support, BJP or Modi or something, the time when all of this was happening, they all had their mouths shut because there was absolutely no way in which they could defend what was happening until and unless they found either one burnt bus that still they can't trace back to
We still don't know who did
people.
that.
Yeah, I think it was Kejriwal, but we don't know.
Nobody
And
knows.
now they have the entire Shahrukh debacle, which started the riots in North
What
Delhi.
do you think about the Shahrukh debacle?
See,
Do you
that
think
was
it's a rouse, like they've placed him there with the specific name?
I think that can, I think that BJP has done, but then that also brings in the possibility of all other shooters who have allegedly been a part of BJP subgroups like the Hindu Rashtra Dal or the Pinky Dal or something like that. Imagine. And you can just say that anyone and everyone is being paid to come there to, stir more debate, stir more controversy.
Do you think the whole Shaheen Bagh, like the whole scene, like the whole protest over there, do you think it's sponsored by one of the political parties?
See, if Congress is sponsoring it, then hats off to them for political planning. But
For the first time that
yeah,
they've properly planned something in eight
I
years.
mean, that's a great move if they're doing it, but I don't see them
I
being
think
smart enough,
I think at this
especially.
point we just feel bad for
I
Congress.
don't even feel bad. I just want Rahul Gandhi and everyone who has Gandhi in their names to take a backseat because, face it, Mahatma Gandhi died a long time ago. The Gandhis who could actually make a difference have made the difference, and now you guys don't have the same whole knowledge or understanding of what's happening in our country.
Hmm. And essentially, see, in my in my opinion, I think everything that's happening around the riots, with the riots, everything is extremely politicized in terms of BJP doing what they do best. And also at the same time, I think there are other political parties who are also doing something to. I'm trying to be very like put
He's trying
like
to be a centrist,
very
guys,
very very
also known as an
correct.
asshole in today's days.
I'm being very careful with the details and the words that I use because I don't want to.
Lose his job over something that he says
Yeah.
on the
Also,
internet.
I have a friend who um, basically is associated with the BJP or the student wing.
These aren't people you should call friends, guys.
Yeah, I mean, essentially. So I was looking through his profile, and everything that it's on there. I mean, all the posts that he's shared, all the posts are from weird names and profiles, which are definitely the IT cell, and which are very biased. And I'm looking for a few of them to just read out so that I can tell you. But everything is in Hindi, so I can't read properly. Sorry for being anti-national, guys. But essentially, yeah, I think everything from the riots or like the protests to some extent, I understand that it happened willfully, but after a certain time, I think there was a lot of politics involved in it because I mean, people can't just sit at a protest and not work for 30 days.
So,
Then there are people who are basically earning their wage daily. You can't just sit there and not work.
again, this
This
might
is
be
all
a rig, yeah,
speculation. All
and what I'm
speculation.
going to say might sound regressive, but hey, it was women who were sitting there, and I, in their age group, women aren't supposedly known to be, working or earning for the family. That this is something that again I'm speculating about, and this might just be completely untrue. But I will continue to believe that people sat there because
Willfully.
of what they want, because of the revolution that they wanted to
Yeah,
bring
I'm
about.
pretty sure they
Yeah.
sat there because of what they wanted, but I think they were like they could have. been there for like 10 days willfully. But I think once it crosses a certain time when you're literally out of money, I mean, you have to be practical in life. You can't just be like, I support this, so I'm going to sleep hungry tonight.
But
That's
see,
not clear.
thinking about whether or not you're going to have a country to be a part of in the next few months is also something you have to be practical about. So again, opportunity cost exists everywhere. And the problem with this again was the fact that, see, now all of us are talking about the coronavirus and
Completely
we
forgotten.
have forgotten completely about what's happening in the political atmosphere. One more thing that we need to
Again, I think that
understand:
comes from a place of privilege where,
privilege, and obviously thinking about one's own, matlab,
yeah,
about themselves,
yeah,
not about others. This coronavirus has struck at the absolute perfect time for
I'm,
the BJP
yeah.
because no one cares about Shaheen Bagh, no one cares about Northeast Delhi
Let me
or
interrupt you for one. Let
anything.
me interrupt you for 1 second. I found a great post. It says, गांधी वो है जो हमें जबरदस्ती पढ़ाया गया. मोदी वो है जिसे हम खुद पढ़ रहे हैं. जय श्री राम. IT style, love it.
This is amazing because we do not know where Modi did his padai from,
We don't
but
know if we.
it's good to
Oh my
know
God.
that he does.
There's no Granth like Ramayana. There's no religion like Hinduism. There's no country like India, and there's no leader like Narendra Modi.
See, I will not disagree with that because,
Remember, Modi is the best.
yeah, true, but it also depends on what perspective you're reading that from. Also, these are not our posts, these are not memes that we have on our phones. This is stuff that we've seen from the BJP IT cell being shared on
IT cell is what we speculate. These are pages on
it
Facebook.
has to be. They have great marketing
I I
campaigns,
think
and
I think
this
some
is,
people willfully make these pages
yeah.
because you have to understand that Modi ji has a very strong cult following in our country. Like, that's embarrassing. Um, a cult following in our country where, because essentially still we have to understand that a major part of our population still depends on the television for news. And and who are the people who are consuming the television news? People above, let's say, 60.
No, they are consuming WhatsApp news now, which is even worse.
People above the age of 60 are consuming a lot of television news. And so essentially the people who are left are between ages 18 to 50. And again, we interact with such a small group of people where we don't get enough opposition, I suppose, to our ideas.
Do you think that that's maybe because there is no opposition to
I
this?
think I think there's opposition, but I also think it's it's in to be against Modi. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's cool,
It's cool to be
obviously.
against Modi. It's cool to be a leftist at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but it was never cool to be a person who has a moral compass. And right now, it is about your morality, and what you see is either right or wrong, and where you stand on that. And the problem is that, like you mentioned, consumption of news is problematic not just for people who are above the age of 60, it's problematic for everyone. Even you and I face the problem of, identifying substance from
That's
public
true.
packaging. And there are a lot of posts, there are a lot of articles that are put out just to incite some sort of emotion inside of you. And this happens through media channels,
And
Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
and also
So,
I think to consume news at this point, it's so difficult to consume news because a I firstly you'll read what you want to read, right?
yeah.
So if say I want to not like Modi, then I'll read The Wire. Then I'll read then I'll watch The Quint or something like that, which is more on the left side. But also at the same time, I'm so curious to know how the other side is defending the news, and then I switch to Republic and Ashtak and stuff like that. And which brings me back to another thought. Then after the Delhi elections, when the apparent voter turnout was very less in Delhi, um, Sudhir Chaudhary defended the exit polls of BJP losing miserably by saying that not enough people voted. Delhi people don't care about voting. They don't care. They didn't come out in numbers. They don't care. How will they change Delhi when they don't care about their own city? I mean, they would literally go to any lengths and heights to defend where their money is coming from.
And see, it's not entirely unfair to them. Like, even they have to be practical about feeding their families and whatnot. But the problem again is for people like you and me, or let that be people who are not in the same economic bracket as us, people who don't share the same privileges as us. Because see, information and knowledge comes again from the money that you have. But just because you and I are able to go to college, we have the ability, we have the avenue and access to information, to sources that other people don't.
That's what I'm saying. So people above 60, they don't
They
even
don't
know
have,
about the wire.
no, but
They don't know
that's
about,
a choice. And not so much of a choice. They're set in their ways.
yeah,
But I'm talking about children in the same age group as us who don't have access to the same things that we do,
that's
because
true.
they consume Aaj Tak, they consume, you know, yeah, Hindustan Times, Times of India,
Funny
and
story.
yeah.
Yesterday night or the day before that, I was playing PUBG and I was talking to someone on the. So I was playing with two randoms, and I talked to this one guy. I asked him where he was from. He said I'm from Surat. So I said ki, oh, Surat, you must love Modi ji, and he said, yeah, Modi ji is good. I said, yeah, I don't understand why people are so against Modi ji. He said, yeah, even I don't understand. I like him a lot. I said, what has he done for your state and what has he done for your country? And there was no response. I was muted after that.
Modi ji is Modi ji. You gotta like him.
I think it's just that he has a very strong cult
Charisma,
following.
and he has a charisma. Like, you can't
Yeah,
deny
you
the
can't
fact
deny
that
the fact that he's a showman.
he's a great public speaker.
Yeah,
He is a great person when it comes to, having your problems addressed, but only in the manner that is convenient to him. He's great at that. He's, again, if you want to ask me, I think as a leader, and only as a leader, he was one of the only choices that we had
that's
in the
true.
election. But then the
You
problem
can't you
comes.
can't simply vote on the basis
Yeah,
of the only
yeah,
choice
yeah.
that you have.
It has to come down to the ideology that you support and the ideology that is being perpetrated through the leader.
And I understand how, like, for the past like two elections, their only game plan was there's no opposition.
Yeah.
The opposition is stupid. So I mean, I think it's high time Congress should realize that it's not working. It's been 8 years, 9 years now that Rahul Gandhi is not working. Even though, let me go on record and say I like Rahul Gandhi a lot. I think
Ooh.
I like him a lot, and I think he speaks well. I think he speaks sense a lot of the time. It's just really misconstrued.
He
It's
said, "एक दिन मैं सुबह उठा रात को." That does not make sense at
I
all.
think that's just stage fear. I think every one of us has a little bit of stage fear, and he has a lot of it. But irrespective, I think I watched a couple of his interviews. Not a couple, like quite a few, and I liked what he spoke about. Even though again, all of it is anti. So the only point where Congress and BJP differ in their election politics is Congress talks about issues, Rahul Gandhi talks about some issues, and the BJP just doesn't. He hasn't spoken about demonetization since it happened. He's probably not going to talk about. He literally rejected the fact that there was any discussion on NRC. He just rejected the fact in a rally that we haven't spoken about it. I don't know what the hell that means. So I mean, there's so much. I mean, I just don't understand what they're trying to put forth. I mean, it's just too difficult to follow BJP politics because I just don't find sense in anything they speak. So yeah, essentially coming back to my point, I said I like Rahul Gandhi, but they just have to change the face of Congress now. Like it's not working.
So
I think this is where we differ.
if you want to make sense of BJP politics, then one thing that I have observed is that when I'm talking to people who are in support of the right wing, then is that while in the process of the argument or the discussion, actually it's not a discussion when I'm talking to them, it's always an argument where they are shouting at me. So
And you're not shouting back. No,
no,
you're always
I
civil.
am a leftist. I don't shout at people.
Jay is always civil in
Yeah.
his talk.
So the thing is that in their arguments, you will see that there's a lot of contradiction. And that is where I think the
And I think
major
a lot of
fault is.
misinformation also.
There is a lot of misinformation because if you look at it, then the claim of Hindutva is based on the fact that the British took India from the Marathas and not from the Mughals,
Right.
which is actually not entirely false. The thing is that when the Maratha revolution had started, is the time when Jahangir had gone to Deccan. And at that time, the British came in and they fought both of them separately. Even though the ruling party at that time were the Mughals, the largest empire was under the Marathas. So, if the people who are supporting BJP, who are on the right wing, if they just try to get the right information and then make their claims, then it might be, a fruitful conversation for both sides and not just for them when I'm telling them what's wrong and what's right.
Honestly, I think we would welcome someone who actually supports BJP and the right wing to come on our podcast and genuinely talk to us in a civil manner, because we're both we're very curious to understand
Well,
how.
at least we claim to be.
No, I mean, I'm really curious about how someone who's properly informed about the country, how is someone like that going to defend the party in power, and how they're going to support the demonetization, the GST bill, and whatever CAB-NRC.
So,
And
see, one more interesting thing that I would like to point out here is that there have been a lot of reports that have said that corruption has gone down in the BJP regime, which is true.
do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Because I'll tell you where the distinction lies. So, corruption is a twofold argument. The first is where the money that is, circulated in this corruption bubble goes to one person. With BJP, everything that is being streamlined, it is going to the party, which is why there is no official record of the corruption that's happening. And in bureaucracy, this has been very well hidden.
Do you know Amit Shah's son's
Yeah, his company rose
company's
on
valuation
1000%.
16,000
Oh, I
times?
mean, see, his father is Amit Shah. He has the business acumen that all of us lack, obviously.
16,000 times. I mean, I want to be that smart. That I want this podcast to grow 16,000 times in a year. So, but essentially, I was reading about how they won the earlier election, the 2014 election.
Yeah.
The 2014 election, everything, their claim was based on Congress being corrupt and stuff like that. And they took the 2G scam and they talked about how it's the worst hit scam that the country's ever faced. And everyone's been acquitted in that case now. Literally, no one's been convicted in that case. It was just another political game, and I mean, I think it worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Do you
true.
think? Do you think BJP plans really smart?
Yeah, so I am a very firm believer of the fact that BJP's marketing campaigns are very well-rounded campaigns. Like they go a total 360 degrees. They start from one point, they might touch a few other points during their entire campaign, but they come back to that.
Why did their Delhi election campaign have Kashmir as an issue?
So, okay, this is a very, very interesting thing. I was talking to my dadu one day, and we were discussing CAA, the riots, and everything else that was happening. So I told him that, Dadu, listen, the Delhi elections are coming up, and I hope that you're not going to vote for Modi. And without thinking twice about it, without even giving it a second, he said, "नहीं, मैं तो मोदी के लिए vote करूँगा." So I asked him that why, what is the logic behind it? And he said कि उसने इतने कम टाइम में कश्मीर इशू सॉल्व कर दिया.
कौन कौन सा
Now
इशू सॉल्व हो गया?
that is the problem, that my dadu, again, who is consuming very limited news and who also has a very strong bias against Muslims because of what he and his family suffered through in the partition, just fails to believe that just because there is something that we are not being given information about, then things must be great there. He doesn't know that Kashmir is on a lockdown. He doesn't know that people from Kashmir can't send out information. And he thinks that just because this is happening, there are no news articles about what's wrong with Kashmir, everything is fine.
I think, if I'm not wrong, I think as of now they've started some, like, I think they have 2G or something
Yeah,
over
so
there.
there
They've
are
restarted something.
some whitelisted sites that you can
Again,
access through a certain.
we don't have the
Yeah,
information. Like,
this is again what has been fed to us.
yeah, and we've completely forgotten about the Kashmir issue. No one's talking about Kashmir anymore.
This is what happens. Like there are things that gain our attention, and then we use our privilege to post stories about them, and then we forget about them and we move on, and
I
we
I
are
think
equally liable.
I think uh, another point where both of us differ is I believe that there's no stopping BJP for another election, whereas Jay says he has an interesting theory as to why BJP won't be back
No, the
into power.
that's not a theory about why BJP won't be back. It is a theory about why it is better for our country in terms of even a sustainable government, if you think about it, to have a coalition, because what we need to understand is that coalition governments have a lot of corruption. This has been proven through the entire INC coalition government tenures. But my opinion is that this is again not entirely my opinion. These are things that I've heard in class from my professors through discussion and everything, and we've come to this one point where I feel that if a coalition government is going to function in a country, but at the same time with a coalition government you need some sort of corruption, then that is a moral compromise that I am willing to make, as long as the money that is being circulated in the corruption circle is not exiting the country and is being used to generate wealth within our country only.
That's a very, very optimistic
The very optimistic, but
perspective.
see, any sort of moral compromise is necessary for any political judgment. And what we need to remember is that a coalition government, because one party does not have majority polity there, is not a mazboot government, but it is a majboor government, which is where it brings about, responsibility and accountability to the citizens.
Also, I was talking to my whole family when the whole Yes Bank scandal hit the country, where like everyone's accounts got frozen and stuff. So just a side note, a lot of my family's money was in Yes Bank. So I was just talking to them about how now that we've been hit directly,
It is
now
more of an issue, yeah.
now it pains. Like, okay, CAB-NRC didn't hit us particularly, like it wasn't an issue for us, but now it's hit us directly. And I asked them what their stance on it now is. I think I won't tell what their stance is, but what they told me essentially was, when the INC was in power, they said we felt really unsafe in terms of terrorist attacks, because during that time I think the whole attacks of what were the attacks, where were the attacks, the Delhi bombings when
Bombay.
no, the Delhi bombings when the cooker had a bomb,
Oh,
some
yeah,
market,
yeah,
I'm
I know
forgetting the name of the
exactly.
market. Anyway, so they said ki at that point we felt really unsafe to just go out of our houses. And now there's nothing like that. Like there's no quotes, there's no terrorism in our country anymore. But I think it's a very like myopic view that there's no terrorism.
And like they didn't feel safe going out at that time. There are a lot of people who don't feel safe going out in the streets right now.
That's true.
And as long as I think even we'll feel unsafe once this podcast is put out.
I think also we're making a lot of like jokes,
Accusations, and
jokes,
there
accusations,
are a lot of strong statements that
and
might
and
land us with
it's all
buzz.
speculation. Let's just say it's our opinion.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is speculation, and we make jokes to make us feel better. So that's our coping mechanism with it. Like we don't mean to offend anyone, but yeah, that's the thing. And yeah, like I mean, I really want someone to sit with us and tell us why
We are wrong
yeah, why we're
and
wrong.
what is it that we are failing to see, because that is generally not something that I'm against, but I am against someone coming up with the same points again and again with a lack of willingness to change their views, and only come to us to talk to us about what is wrong with us and not what's wrong with
You
them.
know my conversation at the
Sutta.
Panwadi, yeah,
Yeah.
at the Sutta wala thing, how it ended. We shook hands and we said, let's just agree to disagree. Because he wasn't convincing me that day, and I wasn't convincing him that day. And the conversation was on another tangent. We started talking about economies, And I think we'll cover economics in another podcast, and how our economy is in a very good state right now. So we'll cover that in another podcast.
Another thing that we've forgotten.
Yeah, I mean there are too many issues in our country right now. We don't even, there are too many issues we don't even know what to talk about right now.
But hey, that's good for us. That's more content.
That's more content for us. There's more cringe for us, and there's more
Awkwardness.
there's more awkwardness for you to spread. And I think we'll end at that. We had an awkward like 45 minutes of like not awkward
Or 45 minutes of a discussion.
of a
guys.
discussion, but again felt very one-sided
Yeah.
at certain times. So I wanted to play devil's advocate at a few points,
But it's
but
hard.
it's so hard. Like, okay, terrorism. Okay, I mean there's literally I don't know what else to like. How else do I support it? Like, okay, Rahul Gandhi, but you can't support BJP at many tangents anymore. Final thoughts. Do you think they've run their course? Like it's over for them after this tenure?
I would genuinely like to believe that yes, this will be their last tenure, but again, this tenure is going to go until 2024. So
I think
that is a long, long time away.
I think a lot of the people who voted for BJP this time won't vote for BJP next time, but I still think they'll win the elections either by coalition or by majority again. Like they could surprise us again, because I think the only people who've gained a little bit of perspective is the people who already had a little bit of perspective.
And were
They've
failing
gained
to,
they gained greater
yeah,
perspective.
they just didn't want to acknowledge it at that
Yeah.
point, but now it's
So I
too
think let's say out of a percentage of 100, there were say 10-15 people who didn't vote for the BJP. I think now it's just going to rise up to 20-25.
Yeah, that's true. But if we can actually
I think we just
control
need
the
a stronger
election,
opposition at this point.
yeah, and
Nothing
also
can
try
happen.
and vote for a coalition government, guys. However you want to figure that one out, please do. And also know that these are our opinions. We aren't trying to force them on anyone else.
Yeah.
As long as you
And
guys,
if you have any like critique,
yeah, just please
on
let
our
us
opinions,
know at any point of
we'll
time.
we'll probably make an Instagram page for our podcast because we
Or
don't
you
have
guys
anything
can
else to
just
do.
slide into our DMs, guys.
At the rate Jay Malhotra 29 and at the 98.
Yeah,
It's
M.
Manan,
Kalra.
no, it's Manan Kalra
Alright.
98. We
Manan
put it in
Kalra
the
98,
description or
yes.
something. So yeah, Manan Kalra 98 and Jay Malhotra 29.
Hope you guys had a good time. Sayonara, brethren. We shall talk to you soon.